Oh, yeah, I think that's the issue. So I should do
If
entire screen?
if you need, yeah, whatever works, troubleshoot through. Yeah, go for it. Okay, now I'm hearing I think the YouTube side. Awesome. So I guess we're live on YouTube. Awesome. Well, with that said, you're free to go. And remember, don't put anything on screen that you don't want anybody to see on YouTube. Have a great panel.
All right. All right. Took me a bit to get everything put together with this. It's sketchbooks are things that I'm pretty passionate about, and it's something that I really want to share with other people and give like knowledge and information because um I noticed that people would, they'd ask me like, "How did you fill so many sketchbooks? Like, what makes you have this drive to like continue, this entire book from start to finish?" And I feel like along the way in my education as an artist, I feel like I've learned a lot and I can impart that sort of knowledge to everybody else. So I started this out in high school and now I'm here and I think I got a lot of good stuff I'm going to show you guys today. Whew. So before I start this panel, I would just like to say a few words about my grandmother, Gladys. On June 2nd of this year, my grandmother passed away from a hard battle with cancer. But I want you all to know her as someone who was a staunch supporter of the arts, a great chef as a Panamanian, and a sassy little woman who did as she pleased. She always stressed the importance of education, that knowledge, we keep it with us. It's not material, it's something that stays with us. And if she were here right now, she wouldn't be just proud of me, but you guys. So, on with the lesson. Um, all right. So, my name is Cheyenne. You may know me as Onosse. It was a key smash, so there's no real official way of pronouncing it. I've finished about over 40 sketchbooks at this point in my artistic career, starting from the latter half of middle school till now. Uh, Currently, I'm a freelance illustrator and designer. I illustrate a pretty big variety of things, surmise either as not safe for work or safe for work. My major in college was industrial design, which is essentially the study of aesthetics, function, ergonomics, and human habit. Every single product on the market, if the company gives a damn, will have an industrial designer make sure that the product is stylish yet functional. Aside from that, in my work, I'm a goth. I love video games, books, music, and fiber arts such as knitting and crochet. I was a professional dancer for 10 years and I moved over 20 times due to a tumultuous childhood, and I'm from Florida. What does this have to do with sketchbooks? Well, everything. A sketchbook is a reflection of who you are as an artist. It is your identity and it is as unique as a fingerprint. No two artists have the same sketchbook, nor style, or approach to art. We all experience the world in our own unique way. In many ways, your sketchbook is of a certain time period. It's a really good capsule of who you were, like at a certain time in your life. So everything we draw to some extent is taken from reality through our senses and then translated from our brains to paper, or in any medium, be it digital or otherwise. Artists from the very beginning drew what they saw on cave walls with pigments. The world's oldest cave drawing is in Indonesia, and it is of a pig drawn nearly 45,000 years ago, and that's just believed to be the minimum age. To be a masterful artist is to heed to nature's properties, learn from them, and accurately replicate them from the memory bank you've developed through studies. One great way to exercise the muscle is to have a sketchbook with you when you're going about your day. Observational studies, in my opinion, are the fundamental foundation that every artist should practice regardless of skill level. There is never a time when using the material world to inform your artwork will hurt. For example, if you sit outside during a sunny day versus an overcast day, the colors on every object will be different. We then take this observation and implement that next time when you're making some art. You eliminate the guesswork, which is important because relying on your brain to make art and only your brain will sometimes make things look a little bit off. Observational studies and reference are not only important but necessary for pretty much any artist of really any skill level. We usually define a sketchbook as a book that artists use to draw for invention and observational studies. They come in many different shapes, sizes, and colors with different paper qualities. Some artists like to use large ones, and others work in really tiny sketchbooks. I've also seen artists that bind their own books. As you start to develop your habits as an artist, you will gravitate towards certain aspects that align with your work. A sketchbook can go further than that, just at the traditional sense of a 2D artist. A sketchbook can be for writers, animators, and 3D modelers. A sketchbook can be more than about what you just write in it, rather than just sketches. Or something that maybe you've learned or that has challenged you, like in a program, or just, you hear something that somebody says and you write it down. Notes are just as valid, and I actually encourage that you write in your sketchbook. So here are just like a few notes that I keep in my sketchbook. I have a couple of them. Uh, this one is like my painting one. Uh, I have other ones that have like different kinds of paper in them. But sometimes like I don't really like write. I'll just, do a thumbnail or write some notes that, intrigue me or something that I noticed that day. And this is just another page in one of my painting one, kind of rather old painting, but you know, it's nice to sort of like carry your sketchbook and you can set it up and then look outside and it's a nice day too. Like I remember this particular day really well because I painted it. So it gives you memories of, what you were doing during that time. So why should you keep a sketchbook? Well, whether you are a digital artist or someone that really enjoys working in traditional media, you will find that having one is a great way to keep track of your progress, your ideas, and your inspirations. The first contract job I ever landed was because of my sketchbook. Having a working book of sketches you can show is, to put it lightly, very intriguing to people. Sketchbooks can also be in places that regular technology cannot. Courtrooms, bedrooms, and places where photography is not allowed can be bypassed with a sketchbook. You can also document your travels with a little sketchbook, and it will feel very personal when you have illustrated memories of a place you may have visited. One artist I will be touching on later is James Gurney, who is a traditional artist that travels the country and makes beautiful plein air gouache illustrations, as well as fantasy. So, how can you effectively maintain a sketchbook, and what should you do when choosing one? I know a lot of people generally say, I can't keep working in one sketchbook, and I understand that sentiment. I find that when you've personalized your sketchbook, or are a bit more than halfway into the sketchbook, is when you actually start to grow attached to it. So personalize your sketchbook in ways that makes it feel like your own. It's normal for your sketchbook to look worn in when you bring it around. It's supposed to be sort of beaten up. You don't really want to like have these pristine pages. I mean, you can if that's like your taste, but I've found that when you kind of like defile the page or just like you mess it or ruddy it up, you feel much less pressured to make it look good. And then you can see shapes and you can see colors that work together, and it just sort of like branches out. Like this is one of the first pages in my other sketchbook, and when somebody, I forgot who bought this for me, but the paper was really nice, and I that was like the first thing I noticed. I was like, oh, I don't want to ruin the paper because this is really quality, but whatever you make is going to be quality. People love to see what you do in there. People are very curious about sketchbooks. Uh, I also know that white paper can be very intimidating in the beginning because you don't want to ruin the paper. The thing is, destroying the sketchbook with purpose by tinting the paper with a color or pasting in things you found eliminates the power of the white paper. When you stop seeing a sketchbook as a perfect book that you need to fill with only amazing sketches, you are finally free to do as you please. A sketchbook is quite literally not a perfect piece of artwork and should be destroyed. Another good exercise to eliminate perfectionism is to never rip out a single page you don't like. If you don't like it, paste something on top of it, paint over it, or gesso over it. Ripping pages out doesn't look good and strains the binding on the book. Keeping your worst sketches in your book teaches you that you make a mistake. It happens all the time in art. Whenever I show my sketchbook, there's tons of sketches in there that I find really bad. But whenever other people look at it, they'll often point to the sketches I hate and say that they like it. Oh, and so this is actually not my art. This is one of my best friend's sketchbooks. Fun fact about him is he's actually red-green colorblind, and my friend gave me this sketchbook, and I was like, I don't really want a new sketchbook right now, and it has red paper, so I'll just give it to him. So this is what he decided to do with it. Because my friend is colorblind, he doesn't really like pay attention to color per se. He says like he sort of sees it as a value instead. I mean, for anybody who knows somebody who's colorblind or is, you can probably understand that, but I've always just found it kind of funny looking in his sketchbook because it's like it's red and he doesn't even know it's red. And the drawing on the right side is also his sketchbook. The drawing on the left is just I did that. It's we have like a whiteboard in like my little office area, and sometimes I'll just like, stand up and just kind of like doodle around and just erase and yeah, have some fun on it, just like messing around with some markers. So generally when we see a sketchbook we want to buy, the price can be pretty high. Art products are not cheap. I know this firsthand, but I have worked around it when necessary. I went to an arts and design vocational high school in Miami, Florida. It was a public school with all kids of like all different income backgrounds, but the goal was the same for us. More than half the time spent at school was dedicated to making art. So I was surrounded by many young artists trying out new techniques. I had friends who made art using crayons, paint from coffee grounds, and cut up magazines. When I was in art class at my middle school, I met an artist who used old books retired from libraries as sketchbooks. He painted on cardboard too because he liked the tone and texture of it better than gessoed canvas. The necessity to create and experiment with art is not held back by price point when you're passionate about it. These days, I usually use a sketchbook that a friend is hoarding, and I usually just buy like regular gel or ballpoint pens, no erasers and no pencils. But I'm always trying out different techniques and like new ways to use mediums. Uh, sometimes I go through certain periods of just like, oh, I just want to use like pen. I don't want to fuss with anything else. But I you work with what you like and what you feel like vibes with your artwork. So I'm going to show you guys some examples of some artists and their sketchbooks because I feel like it can't just be my own personal point of view. And these are some artists that I really like and I think that you guys can, consider learning from. But we're going to first start with Rebecca Sugar because she's pretty known and I mean, she has a very interesting way of recording and keeping her sketches. I'm not sure if she still does this one particular technique that I'm going to talk about, but it is something that I think is really good for beginners or people who don't like to bother with like white paper. So the first artist I want to touch on is Rebecca Sugar. She's an artist and an animator, and I'm sure we're all familiar with her. But for a quick rundown, she's the creator of the cartoon Steven Universe and was a storyboarder for Adventure Time and made a few comics back in the day. What stood out to me about her is how she explained on her Instagram one day that sketchbooks were very intimidating to her, and it made her not really feel like she wanted to work in it. So she doesn't really work in a sketchbook per se. Instead, she makes her sketches in random pieces of paper and then fits them into a binder. And quoting her from her Instagram, she said, I recommend binders. Sketchbooks always make me nervous, and I would tear out pages, so I started using binders. I would draw a lot and throw most away and save only what I liked in sheet protectors. No pressure to get anything right on the first try. I would also print and keep reference and inspiration in there too. I would always have one of these with me. So this is like a picture of a pile of some of her sketchbooks. I think some of them kind of go back to when she was at SVA in college, I think in New York City. And I'm not entirely sure if she still does this technique because she updated this in like 2016. But it's a very interesting approach to maintaining a sketchbook and like bodies of work. And I think it's like very effective and it's super easy. And these are just some of her other sketches. Printing out reference is a great way to tack in inspiration and start to work the sketchbook as a source of like knowledge. Creating mood boards inside the sketchbook or exclusively using it for that purpose is perfectly valid. I've also observed from her sketches that if she doesn't like a sketch, she just puts a post-it note like right on top of it. I've also seen animators use post-it notes to like make storyboards too, which I think is a great idea. I actually like what she's done so much with that like I do it myself now. Like I use tons of sticky notes. If I don't really like a face, if it looks dumb to me, I can just like paste it over and it kind of looks nice too. It's a little pop of color. It draws your eye there. So, you know, you, ripping out the page isn't all that necessary if you can just paste something on top of it. Part of being an artist is learning about yourself and how to make a drawing environment optimal for yourself. Lucian Freud, an accomplished British figurative painter, would have two studios and work at odd times. Painting on his feet required extraordinary stamina. He painted all the way into his like until he died, basically. But he had this really weird work schedule of working in the morning with one model, then he took a break in the afternoon, and then he had an evening session with another model for 7 days a week, all year round. That's insane. And Frida Kahlo, the Mexican painter, continued to paint with a specialized easel even when she was essentially disabled from a bus accident. Um, so yeah, everybody has their own specific way of doing things. I usually have a little drawing buddy with me. Yeah, there she is. She's always around me. Actually, she's pretty much with me every single day when I'm drawing. So, you know, have a drawing buddy. So, Gian Giacomo Caprotti de Arena, otherwise known as Salai, was an Italian artist and pupil of Leonardo da Vinci. He also had a sexual relationship with him. This whole story between Salai and Leonardo is actually rather interesting. He was his pupil for about 25 years, and they would apparently like fight a lot with each other. And Salai was he was kind of Leonardo's lover, I guess, whatever it would be in the like past. But he was the model for a lot of the paintings that Leonardo has done. I This is him right here. Some people think he might actually be the face for the Mona Lisa. Um, but yeah, he drew dicks in Leonardo's sketchbook. I always found this like so funny. I forgot how I found this. I think I was once renting a book out from the library about like old masters sketchbooks. And I like flipped to Leonardo's page and I saw these like little dicks drawn on there and like wow, like artists really don't change no matter what. I feel like sometimes, like when we look back at history or we talk about it, we tend to forget that like artists also do like dumb little doodles on the side. Like that will always be a thing. So, yeah, it may be pretty surprising that like Leonardo da Vinci has dicks drawn in his sketchbook, but he also has like detailed anatomical studies, kittens, flying machines. He even cataloged like his daily clothing choice, and he really liked pink tights. And here's like another really interesting, kind of gay like drawing. It's just fascinating to me because it's like you can kind of peer into like a different time. I mean, Leonardo was born in like the 15th century. That's when high renaissance was going on. It's interesting. I We all love to see these little doodles that come from your mind. It's just and it's worth saving and it's worth looking at. So another artist I really recommend is James Gurney. He's much more contemporary. He's an American artist and author, best known for his illustrated book series Dinotopia, which is presented in the form of a 19th century explorer's journal from an island utopia cohabited by humans and dinosaurs. He studied archaeology at the University of California, Berkeley, and received a BA in anthropology. So that kind of like goes back to how I'm saying that you need to like implement what you love and care about into your sketchbook. Like, who are you as an artist? What are your interests? Because like James Gurney does, a lot of like uh very interesting fantasy settings. I mean, Dinotopia was, I think, the thing that really spearheaded his career because he basically took these pictures of like humans and dinosaurs living together and painted them into very beautiful like fantasy illustrations. And these are some I'm gonna say probably Kaysen and gouache. He uses a lot of different like traditional media, but he has like absolutely breathtaking like pieces, and he doesn't even spend too long on them either. If you ever like, you're confused by color or light or background, I highly recommend him because he has a lot of videos also on YouTube that you can watch of him just like sitting down. He'll just like get up, find a spot that he's like, "Oh, that pile of snow is really nice. I'm gonna paint that." So he'll just get up and open his sketchbook and start like painting it. So I really love his like plein air, like kind of middle America, random parts of town. It's kind of like romanticized. It's very pretty. These days, he generally updates his social media accounts with his gouache plein air sketches in his sketchbook. But he travels around the world with little sketchbooks and has developed his system of work over time. In one of his videos, he has like a little Altoids tin, so it's like those little candies that you get. He just puts his paint in there, with a tiny Tupperware cup of water, a couple of brushes, and a little canvas bag. And honestly, I envy him. I would love to do that. I would love to just like go around and just paint something and then post it and be like, "Hey guys, this is what I saw today." But what makes him so accomplished as a background artist is his daily gouache paintings of the environment he's in. He became so attuned to how color and light works from simply painting it that it just seems very real and it comes to life right in front of you. But this is also another like drawing from him. I ripped it from his Twitter because I think it's like fresh today. This is like one of the newer pieces that he's done. But like just because you've done like these big beautiful paintings doesn't mean you can't have like, you know little sketches here. I love this because it just like it feels very relatable. I've had to take the plane a lot, like the airplane, by myself a lot, and I just kind of relate with this because I also take my sketchbook out when I'm traveling and I'm just like drawing because it's like you're bored out of your mind. It's just mind numbing. So it's just like a little relatable part in his sketchbook. And this is the book, by the way, that he made where he basically talks about how color and light works. It just like different settings of like the time of day or like certain names for certain parts of a shadow. Like it's pretty wild. Like when you really want to like get to understand how color works, I would really recommend this book. Any like skill level, honestly, because it's broken down very easily to understand. And if you take the book and you just go outside and see whatever time of day that he's describing how the light and the color properties work, it makes more sense. The world starts to make more sense. These are my drawings from seventh grade. Yeah, for this last part, I'm going to talk to you all about my own journey as an artist with my own sketchbooks now. It took me years to get comfortable where I am now. I generally feel comfortable enough to open my book and start drawing without page tinting or messing it up, but it wasn't always like that. It may have stuck with you that I've finished a lot of sketchbooks. It is impressive, but the early ones were really just my own childish playground. I didn't develop the fidelity immediately, and certainly not every single book or page is that great. Honestly, I had a chance to look back at them recently, and they look really bad, in my personal opinion. But I kept them because they're a great way to look into the past and realize that, like, yes, I am improving. Like, I don't have too much stuff from like I'd say early childhood, but I did keep my books because it was one of the few things that I could keep with me. And I every time I look at these drawings, it's just like I can remember myself doing these, and it really makes me feel proud of myself that like I I've moved forward and I've gotten to a place where I feel pretty comfortable and I feel happy with myself. But these drawings are very meaningful to me. I mean, my friend, like, this drawing is just my friend asking me if I could draw her as a firebender from Avatar. This is like my first attempt at digital art in like seventh grade, and this is like a self portrait, I think eighth grade. But like these are pretty recent sketches now. Um, these days I'm really into dress design, clothing, and character design. I've been leaning on my interests in the goth subculture, books I've been reading, and of course video games. I also have other sketchbooks for different needs, like painting ones, and a tiny little sketchbook that I keep in my purse. I've been focusing my sights on merging the gap between my illustrations and writing through comics, all of which are done back and forth between traditional and digital. My work in my sketchbook definitely informs the work I do digitally and vice versa. I also always record different artists that I really like, so I can go back and study their work. A sketchbook is really good for doing studies too, because it's just a spot where you can try it out. You want to copy the Mona Lisa, go print it out, and then paste it in your sketchbook, and then just start like, drawing her out. Look at the different like the shadows, the color, the form, the light, like everything that like this artist is doing. Try and absorb it and understand like what makes it something that you like. Uh yeah, this is another piece that I did in my painting sketchbook. I did do marker. Little tip, using marker on like watercolor paper is actually not that bad because it is like a watery medium. And you can kind of make marker sort of look like watercolor. But like I have really good memories when I look at this page because I remember the day. And this wasn't like it was like July 17th. What we July 29th right now. So it's like interesting. I can like kind of compare July 17th, 2018 to July 17th, 2022. That's like it's really good. You can kind of like if you wanted, you could like mark every single day that you do in a page and I've seen some people do that and that's a really good way of like tracking your progress. Here's another sketchbook that this is the one with the nicer paper that I get kind of scared to use. I was like taking a bunch of envelopes at one point and just like I was really, really inspired by like Milwaukee street artists that were like tagging places, and I was like, I really want to tag too. So I was just like drawing these tags on these envelopes, and eventually, like, I just kind of was like, yeah, screw it, just put it in the sketchbook. So I just pasted it in, but that's there. This is like a post-it note, and then here's just like a piece of like some Japanese bubble gum that I really liked. Like you can just use things that you really like. I used to use a lot of like bubblegum wrappers. That's a good way to cover things up or like add texture in. This is my more designy sketchbook, so it's a lot less, I use different sketchbooks now. I don't really recommend in the beginning when you're like starting out to just open a bunch, but like once you've kind of gotten the handle of it and you want a bunch of different papers to work back and forth with, or you want like a different headspace when you're working in your sketchbook, then using a bunch of different ones can be pretty helpful. Because this one is more of my designy one, so it's like I don't really use too much color or like traditional sort of like media like like pastel or like acrylic because it's not really gonna jive well with the pen sketches. So this sketchbook is like perfect for when I feel like designing things. And this is my tiny one that I keep in my purse. It's a lot more just like doodleish. It's one of my less serious ones. I try to at least keep one sketchbook with me that like I don't have to feel too serious with, or like oh, I got to make everything look good. I just like screw it. I'm gonna draw a fish, and then I'm gonna draw a circle, and then I'm gonna draw the Raggedy Ann, and then I'm gonna see where that goes. Because is I don't know. I've found that some people really like the random nonsense on the page, and this is just another page from that sketchbook. I do quite a few observational studies with this sketchbook just because it's like really easy to carry around and just like it's a very low fuss sketchbook. And sometimes I carry like a handful of like markers with me, like just to have like different tones or just make things look a little bit more interesting. So yeah, I just started out with some pen sketches. I think I started out like up here, then I like worked down. I saw this couch. I was like, wow, I want to draw the couch. I liked the texture of the carpet, kind of bled in. And then I looked out the window and it was snowing. And I was like, oh, snow's so pretty. So I drew the snow and the cars. And, I saw that the snow was reflecting this sort of color. And so I put the purples, I put the blues in. And, that's how you build up like a page, like an interesting sort of like charcuterie to look at. There's like little pieces, little things that like artists put in their sketchbook. Um, I'm also going to mention one of my friends, Shamari. I've known him since high school. He was one of like the few originals in my friend group, and he also uses his sketchbook. I think quite as often as I do. He actually does all of his inking and sketching in his sketchbook first, and then he scans it, and then he colors on top of it. So I want to just show you guys like another artist who kind of uses their sketchbook in application. So I think this is a tattoo design that he made for someone, but I love how he commits to like the paper, the ink. Like it has just this nice quality to it that I guess you can replicate on digital. It's like it's just whatever I guess how you want to work and what you want to do. And here's some other pieces that he's done. Um yeah, he likes to take character commissions, but it's like he's gotten his like process down really well, actually. Like I've watched him since we were like 14, so we've known each other for like over 10 years now. And it's been an honor to like see all these different artists improve and find, their way of working, their own unique sort of style, but also like, oh, I just draw it all on this piece of paper, then I scan it in and then I color it in on Procreate. It's cool. I mean, I don't really do that, and I could probably try that out too and actually see, how would that work out for me? Um, so I guess I'm gonna circle around back, I guess, to the how does digital sort of fit into this? How does like digital work in with traditional? How can you bring these two things together if you're more like set on using digital? Well, your sketchbook doesn't have to be a book. Deconstructing the preconceived norms of like the accepted idea of what a sketchbook is art in itself, to change the idea of what it is. Personally, I work these days mostly in digital, and while I appreciate the fluidity of digital, I always still find myself going back to traditional media. I regularly work back and forth between the two because each one has something that the other doesn't. I personally think that you might be missing out. While digital has the capabilities of undoing any mistake, the carefulness and fragility of traditional techniques teaches you that being deliberate about strokes makes you commit to the piece. And while traditional looks beautiful, we all know that in the end, artwork does fade. There is no true medium that is best. It comes down to your preference. But rather, it is of my humblest opinion that you use traditional to inform your digital work. You don't need to make entire works of art in a sketchbook. You can experiment and thumbnail in your sketchbook and do everything digitally. Or you could sketch and ink everything out on paper and scan it in. The possibilities are endless, and when you don't tie yourself down or believe that there's only one way to do something, is when you're truly set free to do whatever you want. So I think that, you know, it try it. There's nothing bad that will come out from making or making a sketchbook or buying one or just dabbling in it. It doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be like a moleskin $20 like 20 by 20 sketchbook. It can be much smaller than that. You can use it as a way to practice. You practice over and over, and then go back to digital, scan it in or take a picture of it. I have here like some of my digital work, and then I have here some of my traditional work. So like a lot of what I've been doing is sort of designing dresses like on paper because sometimes I feel like it's just like when I draw a line, I have to stick to that line. I can't like undo it. So I can get a design down like fleshed out much quicker. And then when I feel like I've had the rough idea of the design, then I go into digital and I refine it, and I've found that that's actually a pretty good way for me to work. So, you know, do what you want, but if you got a sketchbook, you'll look really cool to other people. And I think being an artist is cool. So I want to see what you guys do if you ever decide to do something like that, cuz I mean everybody's kind of curious about a sketchbook and what's going on in your head. So, I guess in the end just be yourself. Find out who you are inside that book or outside or, on the computer, and just make some art. Thanks.